Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of get into the event tonight. So let me just actually need to scan the participants really quick. I'm Courtney Ray. I use all pronouns, and I work for Barch. I'm Barch's Associate Director. I coordinate with the Fremont Hood Committee, who's a number of volunteers, and many of them are here tonight to help us facilitate all this conversation space. And I want to, thank everyone for being here. Thank you to Sarah Walden, the students at the University of Oregon, for all your really thoughtful, deep research and creativity that you're bringing to framing up these discussions. I'm excited, and it's been great getting to know you all and hear more about this. And here we are tonight to invite the public into the conversation. So congratulations, we did it. And so first of all, I want to spend a little bit of time in what you might consider a grounding or just a setting of the context for the conversations tonight. And so I want to first look for a couple of people and make sure I don't neglect to greet everyone properly. Wow, there's a lot of people in this chat, in this room. So on your screen, you see one component of Barch's positioning, our work, our advocacy work in, roundly in an environmental justice framework. And that certainly has to be grounded in an affirmation of the history of these lands and the acknowledgement of Native people, Native nations, and communities and culture who have lived here for thousands of years and who exist alongside all the non-Native folks in a really complicated modern moment. And so Barch will first of all affirm that these are the rightful homelands of the Multnomah, Molalla, Kalapuya, Chinook, Clackamas, Tenino, Wasco, Wishram, Paiute, and many other Native people who live here, who may be here with us tonight. And I'd love to invite folks to speak at any time to Barch's practices and advocacy in the way that it may impact Native people and communities. And folks that have deep histories and abiding histories in these spaces that not all of us share. And so being really cognizant of the different positions that people have in this historical context it's got to be kind of the fundamental tone and atmosphere that we hold while we're having these discussions. The continued resistance to colonial oppression is something that we can see every day in Native communities across the world. And that's something that many of us, I believe, should be finding real strength and inspiration and guidance. Can you move to the next slide, please, Isabel? Oh, it looks like some people are getting lost in their room. So as a conservation organization, Barch was originally founded in a pretty typical, in language you'll hear nowadays, of settler-colonial environmentalism. And so this is a kind of environmental ethic that's derived from, European ideals, really kind of brought into like the American identity in the early 1800s by people like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and then carried through into our institutions and into our collective kind of American ideas of nature, conservation. And so these are really Eurocentric concepts. And the organization today is really, and all the folks that work with me are really working to kind of understand that history and the depth of those ideas, how they are really influential at, even at very sophisticated levels of law and policy. They're also like on calendars that you'll get from conservation organizations, right? So we really need to unpack a lot of this stuff. And not only are those ideals Eurocentric, they also support a white supremacist legacy of colonization. And things like land theft and genocide and cultural erasure come hand in hand with those kind of properties of the American environmentalism. And all of that, comes to its strongest fruition through the law. And we know that our efforts and many conservation groups' efforts to use law to protect public lands is actually really paradoxical. And a lot of conservation groups still don't recognize this or maybe ignore it. And so that complicity continues to harm Indigenous communities. We are in a complicated position, as many groups are, because when we do the work of conservation or protecting lands, when we're using the law, we're actually affirming the authority of the federal government over lands that have been stolen. And so these are all things that we need to bring to light, and we hope that the conversations we're having tonight will give us a chance to pick those apart in really, hopefully, profound ways, and bring some kind of new avenues of thinking to the folks that participate in Barch's work and in conservation work in general. And so we're trying to move away from that complicity to really recognize the harm that traditional conservation and outdoor recreation ethos or philosophies can have on Indigenous people, and how those are barriers to having real justice in our environmental movements. So we're talking about accountability, and that's a little bit of a different kind of framing than acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is kind of a recognition. Accountability is taking action. And so for all of us who are not Indigenous people, it's really important we figure out how to cross that bridge. So at Barch, we're having an expectation now that our board, our staff, our volunteers, anyone who's participating in our work will really commit to this, not just in theory and not just in like lip service, but to actually find ways to make concrete action in their personal lives and in the collective action of the organization. Next slide, please. So we have a practice. It's an introductory practice. Many of you have been in Barch events before, and so you should have a notebook handy that you have already begun to kind of catalog your thoughts, your intentions, and your actions. So in an effort of trying to get folks in having a personal connection to this and personal goals around the actions that you can take, I'm going to give everybody, and in particular the non-Indigenous peoples who I'm speaking to at the moment, some time to consider the things I've been speaking about, the things that have been written on the slide, your own thoughts about this historical context between the non-Indigenous people and the settler environmentalists and Indigenous communities, and how we're going to take responsibility, be accountable, and create new tools and new outcomes that are beneficial and that move the justice, the wheels of justice. So if it helps you to turn off your camera for this, that's fine. It's just going to be a couple of minutes, specifically for the non-Indigenous folks to get yourself zeroed into these ideas and think about where you're at, what you can do, and write yourself some next steps. What are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do by the end of the year? I don't know where you are. I don't know what that looks like, but hopefully this will be a little bit of a work plan for you to get started on. So we'll start that now for about 2 minutes. So start to finish your writing. Move your thinking a little bit away from yourself, and take another minute to give yourself the space to practice humility, gratitude, apology, the things that have come up for you while you were journaling, and direct that outside of yourself to, the communities that are most impacted by colonization, the theft of land, the genocide of cultures. And as folks begin to come back with the cameras back on, hopefully there's a different kind of energy present in the room. And I would love to welcome anyone from any Indigenous communities. If there's more to say, that I would love to invite you to take that space if you would like to, if it suits you right now. And if at any time during this event you would like some space to speak as a Native person about the things that are happening in this space, please know that I support you in that, and I will do everything I can to make that space, to prepare that space and hold that space in a good way so that you can have what serves you out of this as well. And a lot of this is going to be directed at non-Indigenous people in our learning, and that is burdensome in a lot of ways that I can understand. So I hope you will use me as a resource to make sure that this space serves everyone. So thank you for your attention to this. And I hope that the practice and the presentation here has warmed you up to what may be some pretty challenging conversations that we'll have tonight. I'd love to hand it over to Nikki for a moment to talk a bit about the Free Mount Hood campaign and how these conversations fit in with Barch's kind of forward-looking proactive work for Mount Hood National Forest.
Great. Thank you so much, Courtney. And thank you everyone for joining us here tonight for the People's Forest Forum. My name is Nikki Dardinger. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a volunteer at Barch and a member of the Free Mount Hood Campaign Committee. And that committee has been working behind the scenes to plan for tonight's event. So we're really excited to see y'all here. We wanted to share just a few words about this committee with y'all and what we're doing and why this event is such an important part of our work. So the committee's been around now for about 3 years or so, and our goal is to, or at least one of our goals is to really advocate for the modernization of Mount Hood's forest management plan. The plan was written back in 1990 and lays a lot of the foundation for how the U.S. Forest Service manages and makes decisions about the forest. And the thing is, 1990 was 30 years ago. That so much has changed since then. So the document doesn't talk a lot about climate change. We have a lot more scientific knowledge than we had in 1990. Land use has changed, our community has changed, and it's really time to update this plan. Probably it's past time to update the plan. All that being said, if this sounds like work that is exciting to you or that you want to be a part of, please do let us know. There'll be opportunities tonight where you can let us know if you are interested in joining the committee. We always welcome new folks to join us. So all that being said, a really important piece of the updating of the forest management plan is community engagement and engaging with our community. And tonight is part of that, because here we all are together and going to have some really great conversations, and we'll be taking some notes about everything that y'all bring tonight. And over the past several months, we've been so fortunate. We've been partnering with graduate students from U of O's Racial Ecologies class, and they have been working on some really amazing and thoughtful projects on racial ecologies and unsettling ecologies for Mount Hood National Forest. And so excited to have their presentations tonight and have them leading us in conversation together. And as Courtney mentioned, some of these conversations could be really challenging as we perhaps think differently about the forest and our view and our lens on the forest. So again, we'll be taking some really good notes and kind of using and these conversations will really just help to inform the work that we're doing here at Barch and on the committee. So all that being said, thank you so much. Thank you for being here tonight. It's really a joy and an honor to have you all here. Welcome. With that, I believe I'm turning it over to our students who are going to start to do some introductions of themselves and their projects. So thank you all so much and welcome to our students.
Hi everyone, my name is Annalise. Our topic is Memory Haunts This Mountain. So we're really working with concepts like history and memory and land and power. And we want to think about like the way we remember history and how that supports oppressive power structures that continue to silence the historical memory of non-white people and their relationship to land.
Yeah, and my name is Rosa. And as Annalise said, we're going to be discussing some of these topics that you see on the slide here. We're really, and we hope to hear some of your memories of this place as well. We're really grateful to be here and excited to talk with you. And we hope you'll join us in the breakout room. So with that, I'll pass it on to the next group.
Hi, everyone. My name is Racial Ecologies, and I'm working with Matthew Pachachi. We are, there's Matthew, interested in having conversations about representation and the naming of Mount Hood. So our topics are there, and please join us and have a conversation with us.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody, and we'll send it off to the next group.
Hi, everyone. My name is Meredith. I'll be presenting with Caleb and Kathleen around fire, food, and grazing. A unifying thread will be thinking about Mount Hood National Forest as a foodscape. And in my part of the conversation, a driving question will be thinking about what it would mean to look at fire as cultural versus natural, thinking about the ways that non-native forest and fire management has enacted violence and turned food-rich forests into food deserts, and what it would mean to make space for rather than appropriate fire practices of Indigenous communities on and around Mount Hood. Kathleen?
Yes, and for my part, we're thinking a lot about like interrogating foraging practices and these interwoven relationships between foragers and the foraged, especially over time and among like different cultures, peoples, and ecological situations in the Mount Hood region. In particular, holding matsutake mushrooms and huckleberries in tension with their ecological relationships, but really just exploring these interspecies relationships and calling ideas around like forest management and the ways that we think about foraging as a form of forest management into question and interrogating that. And pass it to Caleb.
Yeah, hi folks. I'm also in the food and fire group. I'll be talking a little bit about grazing, sort of like public land access, farmland usage, and then also proposing some potential agricultural alternatives that could be on public land. I'll pass it off to the next group. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maya, and I'm working with Nikki Kane. We'll be talking about Indigenous and settler mapping practices and really looking at the power dynamics of mapping and how those function within the settler-colonial structure to erase Indigenous communities, as well as the subjectivity of land, and looking at some of the work of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde around decolonial mapping as a counter-narrative. Now I'll pass it to Nikki.
Thanks, Maya. I think that you summed that up really nicely. I would just add, we're also looking at how a landscape like Mount Hood operates as a constitutor of subjectivity, and what that might mean to those who are educating or lobbying to talk about or think about Mount Hood in terms of its own subjectivity. I'll pass it off to the next group.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashia. I use they, them pronouns, and I will let my partner introduce herself.
My name is Hannah. I use she, her pronouns.
And we are part of the carceral geographies groups. We're going to be discussing public lands, legacies of incarceration, and racialized landscapes in and around Mount Hood National Forest, using poetry and art as a lens through which we can analyze some of those histories and geographies. It's going to be a really dynamic conversation, and we're looking forward to those of you who want to join it.
Hi, Jesse and Hannah here. Our group project is about glaciers in Mount Hood. So we've compiled a glossary of terms that have implications and resonance for rethinking the way that we frame climate crisis and glacier loss, particularly thinking about it through theories of haunting and loss and ghostliness. So we'll be looking to ask questions about how do we kind of think about these spaces, glaciers, maps, mountains, with attention to kind of getting away from the kind of typical conservationist ideologies around recreation. So we'll kind of talk through some of our terms. We have questions, we have a lot of different areas we can go to, and we're hoping that you join us. Thanks.
So you've heard a little bit about each group. The descriptions are in the link in the chat. When you go to that page, blogs.uoregon.edu, yada, yada, there's also story maps that go with each conversation. So whichever conversations you're going to join, I'd encourage you to open up the additional links that you'll find there. So we're going to do that now. I'll give everyone just another minute or two to look at those descriptions. You get to go to 2. So we'll choose the first session. You get to choose your own. That'll be about 45 minutes. So we'll send you there first, then we'll take a little break, and then you'll go to a second session. So you can pick one now and save your decision on the next one. You can pick them both now, but I'll give another minute for folks to think about where they want to be. So welcome back, folks who've returned to the large room. I'd love to, if anyone has notes to share in the chat about the conversations that you've been having, please do. And as soon as everyone gets back in here, we'll kind of round up and then go for a quick break. So I see the fire and food group is back. What were some of the most interesting takeaways for those of you in the audience?
I can share mine, which was a fact that Caleb shared, which is that only people who own land next to public land are allowed to have subsidized cattle grazing on the public land. So you must be a landowner to benefit in that way.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things in fire we talked about is grazing, but also the idea of agroforestry, or the use of public lands in maybe some kind of an agricultural endeavor that doesn't affect the amount of forest that we have. Not turning it back to regular ag land, but utilizing it in a sustainable way that doesn't impact forest. I think that's one of the things that was interesting to me. Thank you.
Let's see. So the naming, the film and naming group is back. Can someone share a tidbit or two from that conversation?
I mean, if we're all being shy, I can do it since I was taking
notes. Yeah, please do.
So yeah, we started out watching a short film about, well, I guess I shouldn't give it away so that people will go into session 2, but we started out watching a short film and looking at a cartoon and sharing our thoughts on that. And it was interesting because it really felt like, you know, most of the people in the group, and this is, I'm cheating because this is what I said at the very end, but it was the thing that stuck with me, was that, you know, throughout this conversation, we were all kind of on the same page of like, yes, this is how we feel about this. And, you know, we struggle with these things internally and externally. And, you know, how do we reckon with these complicated and difficult feelings? You know, but like, from my perspective, I'm like, well, we're all sitting here having this uncomfortable conversation. So we must be people that are having uncomfortable conversations. And how do we reach people who aren't having uncomfortable conversations outside of Bark? And then Mia was like, oh no, don't you for a second think that everyone on Bark's mailing list is on the same page of uncomfortable conversations. So that was that was new and interesting for me to hear, and that people would feel strongly enough about it to respond. And so I guess I'm glad for all the people that are here today having these uncomfortable conversations and figuring out a path forward for themselves and for their organizations and et cetera.
Thank you for sharing that, Tanya. Yeah, we recently, I mean, we often send out email communications to try and bring a new perspective into the conversation when it comes to the conservation base that the organization has built over 20 years. And every time someone lets us know that they don't like that. So we're chugging along, but there's a lot of work to do. So I hope that everyone enjoyed that conversation. I'm sorry if I had to cut you short. The story maps that go with each presentation are there for your ongoing, perusal and exploration. So if there was more about those concepts you wanted to think and talk about or share with other folks, those are going to live on the internet until electricity goes away, I guess. So keep that in mind. Yeah, there's the link again. So we're going to have a second session so you can go to a different conversation, but we're going to take a 5-minute break. Let's make it, I'll take a 5-minute break starting right now. So come back in about 5 minutes, please. I'm not sure if there's a recording. I'll find out. I'm not sure if it can record the different breakout rooms.
I know, I want to learn everything.
And then Sarah's class next semester will, I think, be picking up in some ways similar threads to this. So we'll look for having some more conversation spaces involving another class of students from the University of Oregon toward the late winter or early spring. So stay in touch. If you aren't on Barch's email list yet, here come a whole bunch of links for you to check out our new website, our Facebook page, the link to sign up for our emails, the link to give a donation through the Give Guide or otherwise. Hopefully these work. Nope, I have to do them one at a time. Okay, hang on. I can't see the chat while I'm doing this, but are there any comments or questions coming in from our participants?
There's one question: how long will the website be up? I'd like to share it with colleagues and review the other projects as well. Oh, and the answer was the website will be up as long as U of O hosts it.
Cool. Thank you all again for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next time or at another type of space. Have a good night.